a Spotify playlist representing each ward, all future and artists who have called Toronto home. These playlists were curated by the city's music office to accompany the Stroll TO itineraries. Stroll TO free self-guided itineraries help highlight points of interest such as attractions, public art, green spaces, and historic buildings throughout the city. To learn more about Soundtracks of the City or Stroll TO, visit toronto.ca/StrollTO. Also, a big thanks to the city's museums collection team for bringing along some artifacts to highlight the historic, social, cultural elements of Toronto's night economy. That being said, we'd like to begin the first annual Night Economy Town Hall by grounding this gathering in a land acknowledgement and an African ancestral acknowledgement. So at this time, I would like to welcome to the stage Lauren McCallum from the Economic Development and Cultures Division to read our land acknowledgement.
Thanks so much, Chris, and thanks for everyone for being here today. As Chris mentioned, my name is Lauren McCallum. My pronouns are she, her, and I work in the Visitor Economy Office of Economic Development and Culture. I acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, which is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. From time immemorial, Indigenous people have lived in this area, and I recognize the enduring presence of them on this land today. I also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and that these treaties are agreements that bind us as beneficiaries. As part of this agreement, I am responsible for respectfully caring for and sharing this land.
Thank you so much for that, Lauren. At this time, I'd like to welcome to the stage Aderonke Adekande, the Director of Arts and Culture Services, Economic Development and Culture Division, to read our African ancestral acknowledgement.
So much. So I'm Aderonke Adekande. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm happy to be here with you today as the Director of Arts and Culture Services at the city's Economic Development and Culture Division, and to provide the African ancestral acknowledgement. So the City of Toronto acknowledges all treaty people, including those who came here as settlers, either as migrants in this generation or in generations past, and those who came here involuntarily, particularly forcibly displaced Africans brought to these lands as a result of transatlantic slave trade and slavery. So we pay tribute, and I pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent. And we offer these acknowledgements separately to honor the distinct legacies of Indigenous and African peoples here on Turtle Island. Ashe.
Thank you so much, Aderonke, for that. So, welcome. Before we run through this evening's agenda, I'd like to touch on a few housekeeping items. For those in person, please keep your phones on silent so that we're able to not be disrupted throughout this presentation. Our washrooms, the gender washrooms, are located to your left, and the gender neutral washrooms are located to your right. Lastly, this event is being recorded and live streamed on WebEx for those who are attending virtually. We have our tech table, who is located in the back. And also for all you in attendance, I'd like to let you know that we are not recording the audience. So for tonight's agenda, we will kick things off with some opening remarks from the Night Economy Champion Councillor Ainsley, Deputy Mayor Malik, and the General Manager of Economic Development and Culture, Pat Tobin. We will then enjoy presentations on the night economy from our featured city divisions, those being Economic Development and Culture, City Planning and Municipal Licensing and Standards, Social Development, Finance and Administration, SAFE-TO, and then lastly, but not least, Toronto Public Health. Following the presentations, we will have a questions and answer section before we close the night off with some final words. All right. So, to begin tonight's Night Economy Town Hall, we'd like to start off with some opening remarks. I would like to, at this time, invite to the stage, our Night Economy champion, Councillor Paul Ainslie, to kick us off.
Much appreciated. Thank you, Chris. Much appreciated. And right off the bat, I'm going to break the rules a bit. I want to do a selfie. I'm on a WhatsApp group with a whole bunch of Night Economy champions from around the world. They're very excited we're doing this here in the city of Toronto. They've been following all the work we're going to do. So if you don't mind, everybody smile for the Night Economy champions around the world. Thank you. If I get my iPad to cooperate. Oh, reading glasses. All right. All right. I want to thank everybody for being here this evening. My name is Councillor Paul Ainslie. I'm a city councillor from Scarborough-Guildwood, which is in the southeast corner of Scarborough. But more importantly, and I'm very happy to be here as the City of Toronto's Night Economy champion. I was appointed in the fall of 2022 and reappointed last fall when Mayor Chow was elected. So it's my great pleasure to personally welcome everybody here to this very important town hall event, to thank you for putting aside some time to attend for those in person here on the exhibition grounds or for joining us online, especially with all of the very cold weather we're experiencing today. I really appreciate everybody being here this evening. As I said, in 2022, I was appointed as the city's nighttime economy champion. Since that appointment, I've been supporting the work that's led us to this evening's first ever Night Economy Town Hall. I've been very deeply invested and engaged in this issue for many years. I first brought this to city staff's attention almost back in 2017 when I was reading an article in the Sunday New York Times, and they were talking about appointing a Night Economy champion in Amsterdam. And as I was reading through it and seeing the similarities of what was taking place in Amsterdam and comparing it with Toronto, I was like, well, we should be doing that here. And so I put forward a motion that was adopted at Economic Development. We've got a hiccup with COVID that slowed things down, but we've been working very hard. I've got some very amazing staff in the room for a number of different departments that have been doing a lot of the legwork on behalf of everybody here and residents in the city of Toronto. And what I always like to say is, well, you know, this isn't a night economy. It's when people ask me, what is the night economy? I said, well, you know, you look at 9 to 5 city of Toronto, and then we have 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So, you know, there's a lot of things that happen in the city of Toronto that we do very well. And I think when it comes to the night economy, there's a lot that can be done better. And that's why everybody's here this evening. I know there's a lot of very familiar faces in the room that I've been engaged with and talking to, and have come to a number of the Economic Development Committee meetings that we've been having, and I really appreciate that. Because as I said, the night economy, it involves, you know, shopping and recreation after dark, emergency response workers, transit. As I say all the time, these are many different elements that we need to try and strike a balance to sustain the nighttime economy as a diverse, accessible, nighttime social culture and the expectations and needs of the wider community, including our residents. So this evening, staff are going to explain how this process is working, how it's looking at changing regulations for specific types of nighttime businesses, and steps that we think will help support a safe, respectful, and vibrant nighttime economy. You'll have a chance to respond to questions and share further thoughts with us on all of these topics we're going to be looking at this evening. You know, first and foremost, we're here to hear from you the review's findings and the directions they pointed us towards. to make sure that they work for everybody. This inaugural town hall, it's just one step towards Toronto's goal of a modernized and innovative approach to achieving the balance that I think we all want. This work will continue throughout 2024 and into the years ahead. As the Knight Economy Champion, my goal is a cohesive, respectful harmony where both residents and Toronto's Knight economy can all thrive together. I want to thank everybody again for being here. Your interest in this process. Please don't hesitate at any time to contact my office. As a city councillor in the nighttime economy, my goal is to always be very accessible and help with any concerns or issues that you might have. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the evening, and please ask lots of questions. Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Awesome. So thank you, Councillor Ainslie, for that. At this time, I'd like to introduce our Deputy Mayor, Asma Malik. Asma Malik is the Deputy Mayor of Toronto City and City Councillor for Ward 10, Spadina, Fort York. The first hijab-wearing Muslim woman elected to public office in Canada, Councillor Malik is known for staring down hate and inspiring hope for racial justice, economic reconstruction, and democratic renewal. As Toronto City Councillor, Asma brings her local knowledge and experience to be a champion for affordable housing, vibrant public spaces, improved public transit, and safer streets for everyone. Asma has spent her life working to build a better city, more caring communities, and inclusive civic spaces. From student organizing to environmental activism, from childcare advocacy and education and accessibility to policy innovation that improves lives, she has experienced firsthand the power of her working together. From 2014 to 2018, Asma served as our downtown communities as a trustee elected to the Toronto District School Board, where she was successful in getting Jean Public Lum Public School built, the first new downtown public school in over 20 years. From 2016 to 2022, Asma was the Director of Advocacy and Organizing at the Atkinson Foundation, where she collaborated with grassroots organizers, policy innovators, and other movement builders to advocate for decent work and a fair economy. Asma is proud to serve Ward 10, Spadina, Fort York, and knows we can do more in Toronto to bring people in, not just push them out. Asma's vision for Toronto is a green, just, and caring city, a Toronto that works for all of us, includes all of us, and gives voices to all of us. So at this time, I'd like to introduce to the stage Deputy Mayor Asma Malik.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Hi, good evening, everyone. We gave them the long bio, I guess. That's and you delivered it masterfully. Thank you so much. How's everyone doing tonight? This is the Knight Economy, and you are so quiet. So I need to hear you, and everyone online needs to know that there is so much energy and excitement in this room. So how are you doing tonight? Yes, that is right. And online, I hope you're also cheering and giving us your reactions as well. Thank you so much to Councillor Ainslie for your foresight and your leadership on the Knight Economy. And can we give Councillor Ainslie a round of applause? Can we give Chris, our MC, a round of applause, who's going to be taking us through the evening so beautifully? And also our ASL interpreters who are ensuring that this gathering is accessible to as many people as possible. And I am so proud to be here. My name is Asma Malik. My pronouns are she, her. And I am so excited to be here as the local councillor for Spadina, Fort York, and as Deputy Mayor of Toronto. I appreciate the kind welcome and the invitation to say a few words tonight. And I want to begin with gratitude. And there's quite a few thank yous that I just want to start off with. You know, thanking city staff from planning, municipal licensing and standards, economic development and culture, safety, TO and Toronto Public Health, who, as you saw, are in attendance tonight to hear from you and make presentations on the important issues related to the night economy, which we know is complex and so important in order for us to achieve the potential of the night economy. So thank you so much for your leadership on this. I know that Councillor Ansley mentioned there are a lot of familiar faces in the room, also because we have such incredible business improvement areas and communities. I want to thank our amazing BIAs, our small business operators who work in the night economy, including fantastic arts and culture establishments, restaurants, bars, event and festival organizers, and more. Can we give you all a round of applause? And additionally, thank you, and I say this really from the bottom of my heart, to our residents associations, our neighborhood representative, and engaged residents who have been spending time with us throughout this process, and also tonight, as was mentioned, on this very cold January evening. We really appreciate it. And thank you so much to our Night Economy Stakeholder Working Group attendees, as well as all our virtual attendees tonight for sharing their time and for the questions and comments ahead. As I mentioned, we're here meeting in Ward 10, and I want to thank Exhibition Place. I'm very proud to be the chair of the board of directors here and the team at Beanfield Center for being so welcoming and hosting us tonight. And last, certainly not least, it was mentioned a little bit, but to all the workers who make the night economy possible, who are so critical to its success and the success of our city, including the staff here tonight, who will be supporting to set up this space and to make sure that it's working for us 24 hours a day. So I really appreciate that. Can we give a round of applause to the X-Place staff? Okay, yes, no problem. I always have this challenge, so I will be a little bit slower. I'm also trying to be respectful of our time. At my ward, this ward is one of the fastest growing in the city. It is home to me. It's where I live and work. So I speak to the night economy and its possibility, its potential, and what it is now firsthand. It's home to also some of the city's most vibrant and recognizable neighborhoods, some of which include the Entertainment District, Ossington, Queen West, King West, and so many more. And these streets are home to iconic venues and spots to go out for the evening, from restaurants, theaters, live music venues, and so much more. They attract residents and neighbors like me and people from all over the city to spend time here. And most importantly, we know that we live in a city of neighborhoods, and where nightlife takes place is also home for so many of us. And all of us as residents, as people who enjoy and work in the night economy, we should be able to get a good night's rest and peace of mind. And we can do all these things. Are you with me on that? And that is what we're seeing evidence of tonight and in this gathering and in the process of this, of the exploration of how we can improve the night economy. And as Councillor Ansley shared, the aim of the work of the night economy is to ensure that we are working and planning collaboratively across jurisdictions here at the city to address and plan for all the social and economic activity that occurs at night in a safe, reliable, and enjoyable way. And over the last year, there has been a lot of public engagement that's occurred in neighborhoods across our city to inform the staff recommendations. And I'm glad that some of the changes recently passed at council will allow for additional vibrancy and opportunities for nightlife to flourish across every corner of our city and are not just limited to any one neighborhood. That is good news for all of us. And engagement on the night economy has been a priority for me and my team, considering the amount of nighttime activity currently in my ward. And recently at City Council and working alongside city staff, I was glad to pass some important amendments to strengthen the staff recommendations that you'll hear more about tonight. These focused on the need to continue building the relationships between operators and our neighbors, affirming our commitment to ongoing touch points and collaboration with our existing stakeholder groups, and providing critical feedback informing these changes you're hearing about tonight, and most of all, prioritizing public education for everyone who's involved in the night economy. We want to ensure that all our fantastic operators are able to do what they do best, that they are not overly burdened, but are informed about their responsibilities and these new changes, and that their staff teams are being supported and empowered to continue to do their jobs well. We want to make sure that neighbors and local stakeholders understand how this will all work, how to best access resources, and to be able to be a part of enjoying the city. I'm committed to staying involved and engaged on this important work in Ward 10 and citywide, and I have members of my team here with sign-up sheets to stay connected to our office and our downtown on this, so please be in touch with us. And, you know, I just want to say again, thank you. Thank you to you all for being a part of this tonight, for everyone who's in attendance, and I'm looking forward to this discussion and our continued work together. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for those words, Deputy Mayor Malik. So last but not least, I'd like to introduce and invite to the stage General Manager of Economic Development and Culture Division, Pat Tobin, to say some words as well. Please, everybody, give a round of applause for Pat Tobin. Yes.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. I'll keep my remarks brief. I've got 3 quick points that I'd like to make. The first is to thank all of you for contributing. You are among 300 or 3,300 people, organizations, individuals who, to this point, have taken time out of their busy days to come down and tell us what we need to do in order to unlock the city's potential in terms of the nighttime economy. So thank you very much. The second point I want to make is just one around process and complexity. So your involvement here is also more notable for the fact that this is a bit of a strange process involving a lot of regulatory changes and really sort of Byzantine and inside baseball stuff in terms of municipal policy making. So thank you very much, but also an extension of thanks to the media, because I think the good turnout we've got here is also recognition that the local media have done really well to look at this issue and make sense of it in a way that's digestible for people who have 3 minutes to scan this issue. So I want to commend folks like Matt Elliott, if you follow his work, in how they've been able to communicate these issues to people. So thank you for that. The last thing I want to say too is, for us, in addition to striking the balance that Deputy Mayor Malik just spoke of, about making sure that this city remains livable and everybody's able to pursue wellness to the greatest degree, but also to unlock greater economic activity and allow communities that are frequently been forced to the margins in terms of where they are allowed to create and consume culture, to have more opportunities to take center stage in terms of their production, and the audience want to see them. Equity is a huge driver for us for this, because those groups have been pushed to the margins, have been more rather than less diverse in this city. And so there is an equity gap that we need to address in this work, and staff bear that in mind. Last thing, and I'll close on this, is I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the staff who are working on this, and others have, and I'm deeply appreciative of this. But I want you to know that not only are they committed to this for their professional lives, but there are also artists and producers in this city. So Mike Tanner, who comes at this from the music office side, if you have a chance, his band is called the Circumstantialists. They play around town. Alok Sharma, who comes at this from the visitor economy side. DJ Cola, I think he still plays around. And not many people know this, Marguerite Piguet, and I'm going to get in trouble for this, long-standing career in the film industry in Canada, not just as an actress, but she moved into script writing and production. To her, you owe FUBAR, or to Marguerite, rather. We would not have FUBAR if we did not have Marguerite Piguet. So thank you for that. So just to say, they are personally committed to this work in as much as they are professionally, and that is a lot that they're committed. So thank you all for being here. We really look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Pat Tobin. With that, we have completed our opening remarks. So we're going to get this night started. But first off, throughout today's town hall, we will be using Slido to engage in person or virtually with the audience. So what is Slido? Well, I'm going to tell you that. If you're new to it, all you need to do is scan the QR code that you see on your screen or head to slido.com, SLIDO.com, and enter meet-in hashtag or $, Night Economy Town Hall. After you scan the QR code, Slido will prompt for your name. We have set the default name for all participants of this Slido event to be anonymous, but if you'd like, you can enter your name if you prefer, or you can remain anonymous. Also, you could enter your name of an alter ego for the night, maybe Pascal Siakam. Bad joke, I know, sorry. After entering your name, you should land on the Slido screen with the Q&A tab that's open and a blue box that will pop up asking what questions do you have about the night economy. After selecting OK, an open field box is available for you to type any questions you may have during the Q&A portion following the presentations. You can also like a question that has already been submitted. These likes act as a vote, and we will be addressing questions with the most votes, interests from our participants within the time that we have, of course. We will do our best to respond to your questions today. Any outstanding questions within the scope of the city's work on the night economy will be addressed in a follow-up email. Again, I'd like to repeat that one. We will do our best to respond to your questions today. And outstanding questions within the scope of the city's work on the night economy will be addressed in a follow-up email. On the right-hand side of the Q&A tab is the polls tab. The questions posed by our various presenters today will appear under the poll tab. Following our presentations, you can move over to the Q&A tab to submit your own question. You can leave your screen open, and it should prompt you to the next question automatically. And if it does not, just tap your screen, and it should refresh to the new question. For any tech issues, printed copies we have on site, staff support located over at the high top table as well. Just in the table in the corner. They'll be able to help you out if you're having a little bit of difficulty being able to log on to Slido. And they're available to provide support as needed throughout the town hall as well. So to get us started, before we start this presentation off, I've got a few questions that I want to kick us off with to get you familiar of how to use Slido. So, our first question is, in one word, what brings to you the Night Economy Town Hall? So from what I can see, curiosity, entrepreneurship, opportunity. We have a live music venue owner, excitement, safety. Oh, this is lovely. Music. We're still, curiosity is the biggest one. Networking. We'll give you a little bit more time to get used to it. We see a couple of participants that are still typing away, and we got about 100 people who are engaged with it too as well. All right, so at this time, it looks like networking, opportunity, curiosity, music, and safety are some of the things that bring everybody here to learn more about the night economy. So for our next question, what is your favorite late night eats option? It's a poll, so what we have is food trucks, fast casual, food cart, pub food, diner/greasy spoon, or fine dining restaurant. So far right now, we have a diner and greasy spoon that is really trending high, 29%. Takeout, coming in at a quick second place. Awesome. This is great. It looks like everybody's really getting used to this. Lovely. All right. So right now, what everybody's favorite late night eat spots here in Toronto options are dive and greasy spoons. All right. Next question that we have is, what is your favorite local musician, DJ, or band? Tough one, tough one. I see some people in the room. I mean, you might want to just name yourself. This is promo already. Whoa. Ah, I see. See, my alter ego is even up there. Whoa. This is awesome. TBG. Was that Opera Review? Scotty Scratch, Good Kid, Looney, Drake, The Weeknd, Sophie Jones. This is awesome. Not Taylor Swift, though. Awesome. Give you a little bit more, this is like free promo for those artists. So, I definitely want to highlight that so they can get some introductions for those who don't know them. Perfect. Thank you for that. I hope that you are all familiar with being able to use Slido. As I was mentioning before, it'll be our way of being able to engage with you all virtually and in person, an opportunity for you to get those Q&As up when we get to that portion. Remember, like the questions that resonate with you, those are the questions that we're going to be able to find the time at the end of this presentation to be able to speak to. So thank you for that. All right. So at this time, as you're all Slido savvy and warmed up, I'd like to get this presentation started. So at this, I'm going to be introducing to you and bringing up to the stage Mike Tanner and Lauren McCallum from the Economic Development Culture to speak a little bit to you all. Round of applause, come on.
Thanks. Chris, round of applause for Chris there, hey? Yeah. So as Chris mentioned, Lauren and I are from Economic Development Culture Division at the City of Toronto. We are going to be setting the table, as it were, for what you'll hear a little later this evening. Talk a little bit about what got us here and where we go from now in City Hall. But before we jump into it, I also want to echo just very quickly the thanks that we've already heard from earlier speakers, for all of you for participating. I won't go on about it, but your presence here online as well is very much appreciated. Also, personally, I'd like to thank Lauren because Lauren's done a great job kind of cohering a lot of the staff work on the Night Economy initiative going back quite a few months. And I don't see her right now, but there's one of our teammates, Kim Ingram, who really led the production for this event here in the room. She's wearing a bright blue blazer. You'll probably see her scooting around here any moment. So please, a round of applause for Kim Ingram. So we're here this evening, obviously, because everybody in some way has a stake in the night economy. Night economy, as you've heard from Councillor Ainsley, is everything that happens between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. Of course, that's the cultural industries, theater, music, dance, galleries, cinema, everything else that brings people together at night for entertainment. But importantly, it's a lot of other things as well. It's retail, it's sports and recreation. It's essential things like emergency services, health and safety considerations. It's shift work, people going to and coming from work late at night. It's issues around transit. It's issues around infrastructure and lighting and safety and things like that. So it's a really wide range of topics that we include when we talk about the night economy. It accounts for around 300,000 jobs here in Toronto. That's an approximation, of course. And importantly, the night economy often brings people together. It's a vehicle for gathering. It's a vehicle for community building, for getting people out of their homes. As we've heard recently, coming through and coming out of the pandemic, fighting against loneliness is more important now than it really ever was before. And a lot of times our night economy is a vehicle for working in that area as well. In Toronto, the night economy is a source of civic pride. Well-being. It helps build Toronto's reputation as a tourist destination, as a great economic destination, as a world-leading city in that area. So this evening, we will, Lauren and I together, summarize last year's night economy review. and some of the key findings. And later, you'll also hear about some of the next steps, new recommendations for businesses like bars, restaurants, and entertainment venues, particularly focused on night, and more general city support for growing and sustaining the night economy safely. I do want to mention too that our two councillors here, Councillor Ainsley and Deputy Mayor Malik, are also part of our Toronto Music Advisory Committee, which is great because it ensures that there's a link between the city's support for music and the city's support for the night economy. So we really appreciate your support on both those counts. So the background here is that in 2018, the city began reviewing zoning and licensing for bars, restaurants, and entertainment venues. So how these venues are defined, where they can go, what kind of uses are permitted in different parts of the city. You'll hear more about that from our colleagues in planning and municipal licensing and standards momentarily. That work beginning in 2018 was directed not just by City Council, but also by the Auditor General. It included research, review of the regulations in different cities, a kind of a jurisdictional scan, and a lot of consultations. As Councillor Ainsley mentioned, that work, sadly, like so many other things, was derailed by the pandemic when people really got subsumed and shifted into other things as well. In 2021, City Planning and Municipal Licensing Standards introduced draft updates for licensing and zoning for these kinds of businesses, bars, restaurants, entertainment venues, AKA nightclubs. The goal there was to better support an inclusive social nighttime culture, and also importantly to clarify the regulations for all of these businesses and everybody connected with the operation of them. There were recommendations for next steps, including public and key stakeholder consultations, which eventually ended up being held last spring, and you'll hear more about that momentarily. In all of this, the city recognized that the pandemic catastrophically affected restaurants, bars, nightclubs, places where people gather at night, and that the new regulations as a result should be consistent and also reflect emerging business models in these areas, the way things have been going recently. At the same time, the city, as Councillor Ainsley mentioned, had been looking at ways to grow and support the night economy. Going back to around 2017, there were a number of reports and incremental related work in that area. Cross-divisionally, economic development and culture, work with city planning, work with municipal licensing and standards. This is, if not unheard of, at least kind of unusual at City Hall for three divisions to work together. But given the multifaceted work that was on the table in front of us, we felt that was really the only way to kind of connect what was needed in terms of the regulations, the rules, and also the more general sort of economic development and cultural support for this. There was a request for proposal process, RFP, through which the city hired an external consultant called VibeLab. VibeLab is based in Amsterdam and Berlin. They have a long track record in helping cities and other jurisdictions work on growing, supporting night economy, rules, regulations, safety, accessibility, those kinds of things. So in 2023, seems like a long time ago when a project this length rolls out. VibeLab led the public consultation sessions that took place in March and April of last year. These comprised an online survey, 7 stakeholder focus groups, and 3 citywide public consultation sessions. As Pat mentioned, there were over 3,300 people engaged collectively by this process. In May, city staff organized a 4th session specifically for residents associations who wanted to make sure nobody was inadvertently left out. In June, staff shared what had been heard during these consultations, including very general themes and high-level survey feedback, so some sort of broad strokes of what we'd learned to that point. After some work throughout the summer, in September, city staff hosted 2 virtual meetings to invite feedback on the draft ideas that were on the table by that point for how bars, restaurants, and other entertainment venues should be defined, licensed, and zoned in Toronto. Throughout all this process, feedback was invited and included via an email address, nighteconomy@toronto.ca, which is still a thing, and frequent feedback from various councillors and their teams as well. The participants who were invited to take part in these consultations were varied. So we had, that font's way too small for me, so I'm gonna look at the screen over here. We had, of course, residents associations, individual residents, community organizations as well. Business owners from the relevant businesses, restaurants, live music venues, bars, nightclubs as well. Diverse voices from equity deserving and racialized communities. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. Entertainment and nightlife industry workers, so the people who are actually behind the bar or serving or working as hosts or hostesses, the people who are sometimes most affected by rules and regs around the nighttime economy. We wanted to hear from them as well. Actual artists, performers, musicians, comedians, other kinds of people who are on stages, do-it-yourself DIY event organizers, producers, cultural organizations of different descriptions. And finally, BIAs, business improvement areas. There are over 80 across the city, and we heard from a lot of them, particularly ones where there's a lot of nightlife activity. And the point I wanted to make about diverse voices was that in addition to the general public, residents and the focus groups listed on this slide, the survey and public sessions were really intentionally promoted to equity deserving, youth-oriented, and geographically varied organizations. In other words, not just downtown. Youth arts organizations, economic development, nonprofits working with racialized communities and regional businesses associations. We're aware at the city that sometimes it's the same voices that tend to get heard and that not everybody follows city comms on when things are happening, consultations, opportunities to give your feedback. So we were quite deliberately intentional about reaching out and trying to make this as diverse a process as we could. So that's kind of how we got here. I'm going to hand it over to Lauren now. I think you're starting with a question, right? And then a little bit on what was found. So over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Mike. Time to get those phones back out, everybody. Mike just did a great job of giving you a little bit of the background about the consultation that was done last year, but you're all here tonight because we're continuing the work and we're continuing the conversation. Many of your voices may have been represented in that survey, but we just want to get a better feel for who's here tonight, who's joining us online, so that we can see who's continuing to engage with the work on the night economy. So if you haven't already, please lock in if this is your first time learning about the night economy. You can let us know if you've already been part of that consultation program, if you've been following online and in the news, if you work in the industry and you're deeply connected to the work, or if you're a member of the public or a resident and you're interested in learning more about how this work affects your community. I know some of us might identify with a few of these, so just choose the one that you feel most strongly about. We've got about 120 responses in, and it looks like I am very surprised. This is not what I thought. It's their first time learning about it. That's great. That's why we're doing this. Oh, you've made my organizing event heart so full. Yay, new learning. Okay, fantastic. I'll give us a couple more seconds, but that's great. I thought we were just going to be telling people things they already knew, but we get to share new information. That's awesome. Okay, so I'll stop and get into it. What did we hear? So you're learning. I get to tell you about what we heard. We heard that Torontonians participate strongly in hospitality in the night. And if you're here, it's probably because you love it, and that's not a surprise to you. We have about 92% of our respondents going to restaurants, 85 bar goers, 82% live music, and 73 enjoyed cinema, theater, and comedy. We heard from everyone that cost, transportation, and access to nearby activities were the most frequent barriers to participation. And we had a higher rate of respondents outside the downtown core report lack of access to activities near them. The consultation participants that did live outside the downtown core generally hoped that more nightlife and social opportunities came to their area. Opinions varied about the nature of what that might look like, but we often heard that family-friendly and alcohol-free opportunities would be enjoyed. Things like sound and noise were big concerns, which is no surprise. We heard this from operators, residents, night economy patrons alike. We also heard that 80% of respondents agreed nightclubs should be permitted outside of the downtown core, but they ideally wanted those nightclubs to be along commercial corridors and close to transit, because we got to get home safely, right, everybody? Business owners and operators, other participants generally felt that the 6% floor area limit in the zoning bylaw for entertainment in restaurants did not make sense for their operations. And operators emphasized the need for flexibility, hybridity, adaptability. What else did we hear? We heard cultural event producers surveyed most often used bars, restaurants, and clubs, coffee shops for their events. Folks outside of the core were less likely to do so. We also heard that small businesses and do-it-yourself event organizers found that the cost of renting spaces and producing events, the lack of available spaces, and the lengthy permitting process were additional barriers. So where do we go from here? Well, Mike already talked about that cross collaboration. EDC, Municipal Licensing and Standards, and City Planning got together. We took everything that we heard from you. Your voice is important. Surveys are important. I'm not a big survey person, but I've seen from this process why filling out your information actually makes a difference, because our teams had 3 staff reports. We sent them off to council. Thank you, council, for adopting them. And I'm going to be passing it over shortly for you to hear about those changes. So this is an example of how your participation in municipal government affects positive change for the community and the industry. Moving forward, EDC is going to take the following actions to continue to advance the night economy. We're currently hosting the inaugural town hall, and moving forward, this town hall will take place on an annual basis. We get to do this bigger and better every year, so give us your feedback at the end of the event so we can make it even more awesome next year. We're also going to be acknowledging that the night economy review, this whole consultation process, took place as a result of the work by member divisions of a very large internal working group, not just these 3 divisions we've mentioned so far. We're going to continue to expand that internal working group, because when we heard your feedback, we heard the other relevant divisions need to be brought into the conversation. But we also know that we need to expand and think about an external working group that will have regional representation from all areas of the city. We're also going to be embedding citywide strategic plans. So later you're going to hear from our colleagues at SafetyO and Toronto Public Health to make sure that safety, health, and well-being are embedded in all aspects of the night economy. And with that, Chris, you ready to hit him with the Slido?
Ready, I'm ready.
Phones out, folks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike and Lauren, for that. That was awesome, giving us that night economy review for us to be able to understand everything that was heard during that wonderful report. So, Slido, in one word, what do you feel is the most pressing issue for the night economy team to address? Get those phones, get on that laptop if you have it. It's an important time. What I'm seeing right now, we got safety as a pressing. We got transit. Ooh, safety and transit still trending. Lack of entertainment venue options is another one that's showing up. Seeing accessibility, space, last call, still transit and safety. This is awesome. I'm going to give you a little bit more time to engage with that Slido. All this engagement is important for us to be able to understand what you are hearing, what you're feeling. That's important. So transit, safety, and space seem to be the ones that we're seeing as the most pressing issues for the night economy team to address. So, thank you so much for your patience using the Slido and listening into that night economy review. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mitchell It's so hard to say Mitchell because I always call him Mitch, but Mitch Thibault at Municipal Licensing and Standards, and then Jamie Atkinson from City Planning to come and speak to you about their contribution to this as well. So round of applause, come on.
Thank you, Chris. Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie Atkinson, and I work in the City Planning Division for the City of Toronto. In the next few slides, I'll take you through some of the City Council approved changes to the zoning bylaw, and I'll pass it over to Mitch and Municipal Licensing and Standards to talk about the licensing bylaw. These are really important because these changes operationalize some of the night economy priorities we've heard about in the previous slides and during public consultations as well. Late last year in December, our city team brought forward recommendations to support Toronto's night economy, and they were adopted by City Council. We'll be going over the changes shortly, but in summary, they're intended to foster new business opportunities, add to vibrant communities across the city, and to stimulate Toronto's economy outside the downtown core. In preparing the recommendations to City Council, it was determined that having a one-year implementation period would be helpful for all stakeholders to understand and get ready for the changes you'll hear about. So these changes will be taking effect on January 1st, 2025. The first zoning change we'll discuss is increasing the permitted entertainment area in eating establishments, which are seated bars and restaurants. Currently, the maximum area for entertainment is 6% of the restaurant, which we heard can be inadequate to accommodate entertainment and difficult to measure out. So, as of January 1st of next year, this amount of space will increase to 25% of the restaurant or bar indoor area. Increasing the maximum entertainment area inside bars and restaurants to 25% will be easier to communicate across the industry, easier to visually measure, and maintains that the primary use should still be a bar or a restaurant. And when we say entertainment, it's almost any kind of entertainment you can think of, as you'll see in this graphic. It could be arcade games, a dance floor, DJ booth, stage, audience area, or any combination of these items. Eating establishments on major streets in industrial areas in the city can benefit from this change too. However, if the restaurant is within the interior or core of the industrial area where heavier manufacturing uses are typically located, the maximum continues to stay at 6% of the interior floor area, just for those specific areas. One of the other significant changes to the zoning bylaw is permitting nightclubs outside the downtown core, starting on January 1st of next year. For many years, nightclubs have been permitted downtown only, and next year they will be permitted in commercial areas in Etobicoke, North York, and Scarborough as well, subject to some conditions we'll discuss on the next slide. Permitting nightclubs in commercial zones outside the downtown core has a few benefits. The first is allowing more opportunities for nightclubs outside the downtown may have the effect of reducing the existing clustering of nightclubs in the downtown area. And the second is, since nightclubs were not permitted outside the downtown area before, this sort of completes the loop and adds the full range of entertainment options to commercial zones. And the third benefit is that it also reduces the barrier to getting a nightclub license that we heard about from some nightclub operators. However, with this expansion of potential nightclub locations, there are a few regulations to comply with, some old, some new. To establish a nightclub, it needs to be in a commercial zone, it needs to be in a non-residential building, so no residential units at all. If it's in a commercial zone located close to residential, then the nightclub needs to be a maximum of 400 square meters or 4,300 square feet. And I'll just note here that the bylaw allows some space deductions from that interior floor area maximum for things like offices, storage rooms, and staff rooms. So it's really just the public areas that are part of that 400 square meter max. There's a limit of one nightclub per building, which is an existing rule, and the nightclub can only be on the first story or basement or in a mezzanine floor on the first story. And on to other entertainment zoning. So this slide that we're on now, this summarizes a few other changes and some regulatory matters we thought would be important for you to know. One of the other changes we made is reducing most of the zoning regulations for establishing an amusement arcade in response to the nature of gaming, since many of the arcade regulations were established a long time ago. For example, we will not be requiring arcades to be in a very large building, like a mall, or requiring a certain distance from schools anymore. Also, we've made some updates to the zoning definitions for each entertainment use to modernize those definitions and align them with the licensing bylaw. As a final note, I just want to take a moment and specify that these are more general citywide zoning regulatory changes. Some parts of the city have area-specific regulations for entertainment, like in Parkdale along Queen Street West, that prevail over these more general citywide regulations. Also, City Council has directed staff to take a more area-specific look at nightclubs in the Etobicoke Lakeshore area and the Scarborough Village area and surrounding that area, which we'll be doing this year and aim to report back with recommendations by the end of the year. And that completes the major updates to the zoning bylaw for entertainment. And now we'll pass it over to our colleague Mitch in Municipal Licensing and Standards to go over changes to the licensing bylaw.
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mitch Chimo. I'm a policy and planning advisor with the Municipal Licensing and Standards Division at the City of Toronto, otherwise known as MLS. So MLS is a division within the city that supports business licensing administration, enforces many of the city's bylaws, so things like the Rent Safe TO apartment buildings program, the noise bylaw, and short-term rentals, just a few examples. So today I'm going to go through some of the licensing changes that were approved by council in December. The zoning and licensing elements are very interconnected. There's a lot of historical issues with both of the bylaws that we aimed to amend in December. And I'm also going to speak to just generally what 2024 will look like as we prepare for implementation January 1st, 2025. So just general overview of the licensing updates, and I'll try and keep this upbeat and fun because sometimes it can get a bit dull talking about bylaw provisions and business categorizations. But generally MLS licenses over 99 different business types. But our report in December focused specifically on bars, restaurants, and entertainment venues, as well as takeout venues and other food establishments. So really focusing on those businesses that are most active at night. And as you can see in 2022, that's around 13,000 businesses that were licensed with the city that are incorporated into this framework. But generally, two key elements on the licensing side. Generally, municipal business license is focused on places that sell or serve food or drinks, and there's also license requirements for nightclubs and entertainment venues as well. But the two kind of key elements that we focused on in December is clarifying and modernizing some of our rules. The licensing bylaw particularly hadn't been updated in a long time. It included kind of old time language like victualling and foodstuffs. So we really worked to try and streamline, modernize in our categories to make it easier for operators and business owners to comply with them. And the second piece is strengthening compliance and enforcement. So what we're doing in 2025 is implementing an activity-based licensing framework to support our enforcement staff. This enables us to focus on some specific activity indicators like hours of operation, whether there's service, the capacity of the venue, and to implement some additional licensing requirements that are focused on how operators can, proactively mitigate issues like noise, how they're managing patrons, just to ensure consumer protection and public safety generally. Oh, I have to change the slide. Okay, I'm gonna do that. Great, I'm gonna go through a few of the business categories that we updated, but I won't get into too many details. And we'll also just lay it out at the end of this presentation where you can submit your questions. Generally, we're working towards implementation in 2025, so there's still a lot of work that we have to do engaging with community and business to make sure that we're ready for a 2025 implementation. But generally, for eating and drinking establishments and takeout or retail food establishments, we made this distinction a bit more clear in our licensing bylaw with some of the changes that we introduced. We also removed the licensing requirement for some retail food establishments where selling prepackaged food or drink is insignificant to the purpose of the business to reduce some administrative burden. So technically right now in our bylaws, a clothing store that has a few granola bars at the front might need a business license. We are removing that requirement and really trying to focus on where there's a municipal purpose to us requiring a business license. And similar to the zoning bylaw changes that Jamie summarized, we're streamlining an amusement establishment business category to set out, a clear category for these types of establishments like billiard halls and bowling alleys, and also streamlining some of those licensing requirements as well. Okay, 2 additional categories. So I'll note that, in our existing business licensing bylaws, there is no specific licensing category or pathway for live music venues. So per council direction, we're introducing a entertainment place of assembly license type that will focus on live music venues and performing arts spaces generally. That really allows us to identify a clear pathway to compliance with the licensing bylaw, which is not currently existing in our bylaws. And lastly, the entertainment establishment and nightclub category is one that we updated to align better with the zoning bylaw. We introduced a new definition that specifies the purpose of this establishment and making sure that there is some enhanced safety requirements, particularly around metal detectors and other safety elements for these establishments. Okay, lastly, I'm just going to speak to activity-based licensing really quickly, otherwise called ABL. So this is a type of framework that we're introducing as part of implementation. As I mentioned, that focuses on the complexity or the extent of the business activities, where licensees with a higher impact in terms of nuisance and safety have to meet a few additional licensing requirements, and those with a lower impact can benefit from some reduced administrative burden. So as I mentioned, we're focusing on a few different indicators, things like liquor service and hours of operation. And those additional requirements will be things like a noise control plan or patron management plan. I did notice in the Slido a few questions about those plans, those administrative plans, and how they'll be developed. We will be having some more engagement with business operators about the structure of those, making sure the city is providing clear guidance and templates about those plans and what is included in them. So I'll add that as just a little plug for some of the future work that will be ongoing in 2024. Okay, these last few slides will just speak to the transition period. As these changes were approved in December of 2023, there's still a lot of work that is just being initiated now to kind of plan what 2024 will look like leading up to that January 1st, 2025 date. So I'll just summarize a few of the actions that MLS and other city divisions will be taking to support transition. Generally, of course, engaging with businesses and business owners about these upcoming changes and how, what kind of category they might be in, if they have to change the license type or they'll remain the existing license type is a main component of our work, and ensuring we understand what kind of supports businesses need as we make this transition. Also note that there's some technology changes that we're undertaking as part of MLS to ensure that the process to apply for a business license and understand the requirements that are needed is a bit more clear and user-friendly. That's the word I was looking for. And lastly, we want to make sure all our city web pages and 311 communications are updated and clear, both for the public and for operators. As I mentioned, developing those administrative templates and public education materials to make sure it's clear how to comply with these new requirements. I think that's it on my end. I will just plug something additional, is that last week, the Economic and Community Development Committee considered a report on the implementation review of the noise bylaw, which assessed the new noise bylaw that was introduced in 2019. So that report and some additional amendments from committee will be considered by City Council on February 6th, 7th, and 8th. So I would just encourage you, if you are interested in the specifics of that report, to take a look. It's available on the city's website. Toronto.ca/noise has some more details about how you can get involved in that review as well. And thanks so much.
Thank you, Mitch and Jamie, for giving us that thorough introduction to the changes that are going to be made for the zoning and licensing regulations. I'd just like to mention, if you have any questions or comments on what was presented and want to understand a little bit more, that you can email the Night Economy at toronto.ca. Again, please email the Night Economy at toronto.ca for any questions and comments that you have on what was mentioned in Jamie and Mitch's presentation. So now, moving along, we are going to get back to that Slido and get you interacting and engaged again. So first question is, are there any resources, supports, or information that we can provide you with that will help you better understand or adapt to these upcoming changes? A later last call, newsletter, a website link, funding, a list of items, comprehensive website, summary report. We're seeing an example of ABL for ABL. Awesome. Please, we see you engage in. That's great. Resources and flowcharts. So we're going to move on to the next question. I like the comedic part of everybody's enjoying this right now. You're engaged. That's what matters, right? Business owners and operators, what are some potential outcomes of these regulatory changes that you may take advantage of? I see open and live music space is trending at 33%. We have about 21 people engaged in this poll, 30. Numbers are going up. We got second as add or expand an entertainment area to a restaurant, bar. But it's looking like right now, open and live music space is our top choice right there. Awesome. Next question. If you selected other in the previous slide, I want you to please specify what other outcomes of these regulatory changes you would like to take advantage of. Well, you know, you're taking the time to type. Taking the time to type. Thank you for engaging on that Slido. That was wonderful. You know, some of it very useful. For others, very useful as well, because it gave us a little laugh and chuckle, so that's all good. So at this moment, what I want to do is introduce and bring up to the stage. You've already seen Mike Tanner speak, but we're going to invite him back up. But we also have Alok Sharma also join in, Mike, as well, from the Economic and Development and Culture Divisions. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Chris. My name's Alok Sharma. I am the manager of the Visitor Economy Office, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the background, there we go, of the Good Neighbor Guide. So the Good Neighbor Guide is intended as a comprehensive resource for late night businesses operating between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. The guide presents relevant information and provides links to related resources from the City of Toronto as well as external sources. It's really intended to support operators in running a safe establishment that benefits the surrounding community, including nearby residents and other businesses. And by offering best practices from around the world, and in addition to sharing what's already been done right here in Toronto, the Good Neighbor Guide for Late Night Businesses will assist late night establishments seeking to create safer spaces and working environments. It encourages responsible consumption and follows general good neighbor principles. As well, the Good Neighbor Guide was created by the City of Toronto's Music Office and the Visitor Economy Office, and it will be ready by early February. Just want to touch very quickly on the contributors of the Good Neighbor Guide. And as you can see, there are many divisions and agencies that were included. Toronto Police Services, Toronto Transit Commission, AGCO, City Planning, MLS, just to name a few. So we've had a lot of input in creating this comprehensive guide. And now, again, briefly, just going to touch high level on the guide content. And some of the different sections that are in the Good Neighbor Guide. So the section titled Opening Your Late Night Establishments really includes information on zoning, business licenses, building permits, food and alcohol. There's also another section that covers off all you need to know about outdoor dining and music. The minimizing sound and noise section shares information about the noise bylaw and measuring sound and noise. It also includes information related to noise exemptions, which is really critical. The section Keeping Your Venue Safe includes topics such as harm reduction, which you'll hear more about, resources for venue bookers and event organizers, as well as resources for employers and business owners, and resources focused on sound and hearing protection. There are also tips on parking and loading, crowd and line management, garbage and waste, and outdoor access to public washrooms in the Outside Your Venue section. And the other content includes transportation to and from your establishment, promoting diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and safeguards against sexual harassment. That is really a brief overview of what you'll find in the Good Neighbor Guide. And now I'll pass it on to Mike Tanner, who will do a deeper dive.
Thanks, Alok. As Alok mentioned, the Good Neighbor Guide for late night businesses will be available online in just a few weeks from now. It's just being tweaked, the last few touches being put onto it, and it will be updated fairly regularly. So there's an opportunity if anybody's got suggestions for content areas or further tweaks and further additions. This is a work in progress. I want to just give you in this infinitesimal font a little snapshot of how the Good Neighbor Guide presents its information. Really, this Good Neighbor Guide is supposed to be kind of a digital version of phone calls we sometimes take in the music office or the visitor economy office, or other city staff will get folks calling in and they'll have a question, sometimes a very good salient question about where do I go for this, or how do I do that, or what's the timeline on getting this kind of a permit. We recognize that a lot of times that information does exist somewhere in the city's labyrinthine website, but it's not always easy to find, and it's not always easy to understand when you get there. So the intention with this is to kind of cohere a lot of this information in plain language in one place. So this first section, for example, oh, what happened to the slide? There we go. On opening a late night establishment, I was personally very gratified to see that opening a live music venue was the #1 choice that people might do with the new zoning regulations. Bravo, we'd like to see more of those. And if you do, book music 3 times a week, and you too could be eligible for a property tax reduction via the City of Toronto. 2 times a week won't do it, 3 will. 144 nights a year, on average. So here in this section, you'll find detail on and links to things like the City of Toronto's existing business supports. City of Toronto has a lot of small business supports. Zoning compliance, what kinds of uses are allowed and where you can find them, and what's licensed, licensable, and where. All the different appropriate license types, if you're not sure whether you need a nightclub license or an entertainment place of assembly or a restaurant license. Dealing with external agencies like the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario, the AGCO. It's not a municipal purview, but it is obviously very linked with a lot of types of late night businesses as well. And, you know, whether you need a building permit and where to go for all that kind of stuff, who to call, in other words. Another section later on in the guide is this section on resident and neighbor relations. We know that's one of the areas that's sometimes most fraught in running a late night business. So this brings together a lot of best practices in creating and in maintaining good local relations. As Luke mentioned, there's a couple of things like, you know, parking and security and operations outside the venue, managing a queue, those kinds of things. We recognize, of course, city staff are not experts in this. Who are experts? Experienced, good operators. So what we're trying to do here is take notes on what's already being done by some of the best, most consistent, longstanding operators in the city and pull them all together, including, some examples from other parts of the world as well. In this Good Neighbor Guide, once you get a look at it, you'll find lots of embedded links to detailed pages elsewhere, application forms, other kinds of things like that. And again, it's really intended as a repository of information, resources, and links that will be updated as needed. Other late night business resources, so things like, as Logue mentioned, resources for musicians, event organizers, live venue owners. There are other venue guides from other parts of the world, such as London, Melbourne, and New York, leading nightlife destinations. There's a directory listing all of the residents associations in the city. So if you're a bar, a restaurant, a nightclub, it's really good to know who those folks are, where you can reach them to create a good relationship with them. Same thing with BIAs around the city. You'll find information there as well. And some resources on event safety and on technical production, especially for people who are maybe new getting into the business and need that kind of advice. So again, an evolving document, one that we hope you'll find readable, useful, and we'd be definitely interested in your feedback on that. I'm going to pass it back to Alok here.
Thanks, Mike. Now we're going to go to a Slido question. And the question is, what additional information would you like to see included in the Good Neighbor Guide for your late night business? Yes, of course. We've gotten the... So safety is up there alongside something about weed and legalizing weed. Yeah. So we do have the same individuals spanning the questions right now as well. So just as an FYI, agent of change. That's great. Is that control? I can't see that there. Sample plans, enforcement, funding. Haven't seen the guide. Sustainability. So that's great. Excellent. So we're going to just kind of quickly move on and talk about some additional information. So as Mike mentioned, it is going to be available in February. So please look out for that. And we will be sharing that with, or it'll be posted on the city's Night Economy and Music Office and Festival and Events Calendar web pages, as well as it'll be emailed directly to private sector stakeholders, including music venues and others. And for further information can be accessed through the city's Night Economy review page, which is toronto.ca/Night Economy Review. And as mentioned previously, any questions related to this document or anything about the night economy, please direct it to nightheconomy@toronto.ca. We should also mention that there's also a resource guide for music event organizers, which can be found at toronto.ca/music. And that answers questions about permits, serving alcohol, promotion, and safety. And the guide for music event organizers also focuses on helping creating successful events from planning to completion. Last but not least, we want to let you know about other City of Toronto resources that are out there. So there's a couple of newsletters, Business TO News, as well as Culture TO News. If you have not signed up for those, please do so. There's a festival and events calendar, which is a free event listing and calendar where residents and visitors can search for events, activities, exhibits, and essentially everything that's happening within the City of Toronto. And there's a music office webpage, which features several different directories, including a directory of Toronto-based musicians that is searchable by name or genre. And finally, we want to also mention some of the business opportunities that are out there, or resources that are there within the City of Toronto. Specifically, you can visit toronto.ca business support for information on business webinars, training grants, incentives, Cafe TO, and more. The webpage on guidance for planning events in Toronto will assist event organizers in event planning, including contacts, checklists, deadlines, fees, and required forms. And you can get all of that information by emailing the event support team at eventsupport@toronto.ca. Thanks. Over to you, Chris.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike and Alok, for that. I'd say, some of the things that we heard when it happens to do with resources from an accessible standpoint is one that, people don't have access to. So I would definitely say take advantage of the City of Toronto resources that they've been able to put together and check out the Good Neighbor Guide when it does come out sometime in February, early February, as they had mentioned as well. So with that, we're going to move into a little bit more of that Slido. Aren't you all ready for this? Come on. In one word, how would you like to hear from us? What is the best way for us to stay in touch with you going forward? Slido, number one. I love it. Email. Yes. Slido is still up there, I guess people are enjoying this engagement and the way to be able to get your voices heard. But email seems to be that number one way that people would like to be heard. Best way to get in touch with the team as well. Awesome. We'll give you a little bit more time. We got a couple of people typing away, but it's nice to know that, email is the way that you would love to be communicated to, the way that you would like for them to get in touch with you as well. So moving along. So at this time, I'd like to announce and introduce to you Scott McKeon, the manager of SafeTO. Welcome them up to the stage to be able to speak to you about the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you so much. Can we get a round of applause for this gentleman and his colleague? There's been a lot of talking and some mad translation. So nice to meet you all. My name is Scott McKeon, and I am a longtime participant in the night economy. So before I get into what I'm here to talk about, which is safety and well-being, when I had a lot more hair and a lot less weight, I really participated in all kinds of nighttime economy in Toronto when I was younger. And that probably prepared me for my role in leading the city's community safety and well-being work that I do today. I'm a musician. I've eaten in your late night restaurants. I've danced in your clubs and restaurants, and we'll cap the list there. But there's all sorts of stuff in the nighttime economy that has prepared me for my journey. So I now lead SafeTO, which is the city's community safety and well-being plan, and that's sort of what I'm here to talk about today. So. SafeTO, just to give you some background, is a council adopted but also provincially legislated community safety and well-being plan. And so historically, safety in our city has been about crime. And really, we ought to be thinking differently about safety, and community members, police services, community advocates have all said that we need to think differently about safety. We need to think about more holistically, and we can't just think of the outcome of crime. We need to think about centering the well-being of people and places in the definition of safety and how we think about safety. And at the heart of what's SafeTO, that's what it is. It's a comprehensive community safety and well-being plan that can be used by multiple organizations, institutions, and communities to develop community safety and well-being and promote community safety and well-being in their communities. And so following extensive consultation and events like this and many others, we developed SafeTO, and it has been endorsed and adopted by Toronto City Council, and we're currently in the first phase of implementation. After consulting several communities, we defined SafeTO, and at the heart of what community safety and well-being is in the city, at least what we heard from community, is really 7 strategic goals that span the necessity to reduce vulnerability in our city, to reduce violence, to advance truth and reconciliation as part of our work, to advance like healing and justice work as part of our work, to engage residents and invest in people, invest in neighborhoods, and drive collaboration and accountability. This is what we heard from communities. So we identified 26 actions across these goals that the city is implementing over the next 10 years. And so I'd like to share a little bit about what we're sort of doing at this moment in community safety and well-being. So what's really important about community safety and well-being is that there are principles that ground it. And this is what we heard from community, is like, you can talk all you want, but we want to make sure that those actions are embedded in human rights, and anything that we do has equity and human rights at the forefront, and that we work to build trust and transparency that may be historically broken with communities. We want to really build communities' capacity to lead and work with communities to advance community safety and well-being, and center our work in the duty of care for all participants in community. And at the heart of that, we were also told that you can't develop this strategy and then put it on a shelf and that's it done. Communities change, the needs change, the dynamic changes. And tonight is a testament to that. The night economy is going to change neighborhoods in our city. So we need to be responsive and adaptable as we implement SafeTO. And so as we do that, you know, lastly, people have just said, like, you know, don't talk, work with us and mobilize. And so that's sort of at the heart of what we're doing. In the first phase of implementation, there's a whole pile of things happening, but I'll zero in on 4 strategic actions that are sort of at play right now. And we will be reporting back to council later this year on the first phase of implementation. So the first one is to really address mental health in our city. I should say first and foremost, you know, the city isn't the funder of the health system. There are other levels of government that do. But there is a definite need in our city to think about mental health differently and apply new approaches. And so City Council has directed staff to implement the Toronto Community Crisis Service, which is a very equipped mental health response in our city. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as I go. The second piece is to deal with gun violence in our city. And what I'm going to say is any one of these initiatives that I talk about, no one entity can do it alone. And so we are applying all of systems approaches to all of these things that I'm going to talk to you about tonight. But in terms of gun violence, we know it's a public health issue. We know that violence is an outcome, and we need to think differently about why someone would commit violence in the first place. And so we have been directed by council to develop a multi-sector gun violence reduction plan. But at the heart of that, we have created, based on international best practices, a Toronto Office to Prevent Violence that will advance our efforts to violence using a public health lens that's grounded in evidence and community lived experience, but also brings the necessary players. So we will have embedded staff from multiple organizations, institutions, and community working collaboratively with us. I should also say that SafeTO has been adopted by multiple organizations. So the Toronto Police Service Board, the Toronto Community Housing Board, the Toronto District School Board, TTC, the Public Library, and other institutions have all adopted this strategy and are contributing to it actively. We are advancing our efforts to respond to gun violence by increasing the capacity of our community crisis response program and expanding it to a 7-day-a-week program so that we can respond to violence and make sure victims have appropriate supports and use response and recovery and healing as a prevention mechanism. Lastly, we're using data better. So data has always been collected in silos and it's spoken about in silos. And so we've created the SafeTO collaborative analytics and learning environment which is a multi-sector data and analytics lab that's taking data sets from across institutions that enables us to apply a public health and evidence-informed approach to preventative work around community safety and well-being. I'm going to tell you about a couple of key services that relate to the night economy. So the first one is the Toronto Community Crisis Service. So this is an alternative to policing mental health crisis response. We actively work with Toronto Police Service, but this is to ensure that trained professionals are responding to mental health crisis calls that don't need a police response. And so we are actively working with a number of partners, and City Council directed this work to mobilize. And so 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, either through calling 211 Toronto or 911, people can access service if they're having a mental health crisis. And so in your communities, if there's one thing I want you to take away, this service is active and it's live. It covers 60% of our city right now. And in November, Toronto City Council gave direction to expand citywide, which we will do throughout the upcoming 2024 year. And by the end of 2024, this service will be citywide. This is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, mental health crisis response that you can call, your friends can call, you can call for a community member that is in need of mental health support. The second is our Community Crisis Response Program. So this is a long-time program at the city that deals with our response to violent, traumatic incidents in community. And so the Community Crisis Response Program operates and looks at sort of like the sort of response and recovery to violence, but then also works around the preparation to equip communities and build the capacity for communities to lead responses to violence and be prepared for that, but then also working on the prevention aspects. And so the team consists of community development officers, and Abdi, there he is. This gentleman in the back is one of our very talented community development officers who leads a component of the Community Crisis Response Program. So if you're in the downtown core, Abdi is one of our staff that would respond to incidents that happen in your neighborhood, but also is available to help you think through community safety and well-being challenges that are emerging in your community. The program also has some amazing support mechanisms and investment opportunities. So if you experience violence in your community, we have a community crisis response fund that communities can apply for to facilitate some healing and recovery work and to aid prevention. We treat the response to violence as the ability to prevent further violence. And so that's why we focus on the healing and recovery efforts. We work collaboratively with Toronto Police Service, and we are looking at our violence from a spectrum of prevention, upstream prevention, intervention or interruption of violence, and the response of recovery. And so we work with multiple partners and stakeholders, and we take a holistic approach to how we do crisis response in this city. My colleague Serena Officer is the manager, and you can reach her. All the information will be sent out following the town hall. Also, we've been working on TTC safety. So you heard me earlier say that we have embedded staff from multiple organizations. We are working actively with the Toronto Transit Commission and have an embedded staff member in our work who's helping us think through safety on transit. And we've been applying the same approach by bringing multiple stakeholders to the table to look at the system in, look at some of the situations emerging in TTC. And as a result, there's amazing collaboration with the Toronto Police Service and some of the TTC special constables, but other kind of human services that respond to vulnerability in the system, such as the Streets to Homes program by their Shelter Support and Housing Administration, the Toronto Public Health Works team, and some other mental health and vulnerable service providers who are working collaboratively in a unit and using evidence and real-time data to mobilize in specific parts of the system to respond to emerging vulnerability. This work is evolving all the time, and we always have more work to do. None of it's perfect, but this is the direction we're taking. Again, applying an all systems approach. The last part I'll talk about for today is our SafeTO BIA pilot. So if you are in a BIA pilot, and Cassandra Alves, who I think is on there in the back, I was trying to find you. Cassandra's like in a crowd, never blends in, but Cassandra in the last couple of months held over 90 consultations with businesses and BIAs across the city and is leading this amazing pilot that we're doing. And so up front, I said no one entity can address community safety and well-being alone. And so Cassandra actually is an employee of the Downtown Young BIA, but works embedded in our community safety and well-being work in the city. So we don't have the business lens. We work with our great economic development and culture folks, but we have we now have an embedded business rep who's working with us. And we had a version of this specific to BIAs back in December to look at the results of Cassandra's consultations and the next steps. And the Toronto BIA group as well, we'll be sort of presenting to them. And so our goal is to sort of really work with businesses to understand what the push factors are and what the pull factors are. What pushes people out of the neighborhoods when it comes to safety and well-being, and what brings people in. Safety and well-being and economic development are inherently connected. They're kind of like, you know, the odd couple, and they push and pull each other, but they'll never be separated. And so we have to treat them like that and think differently about why safety and well-being can advance economic development and why economic development can advance safety and well-being in our city. And so all of this information is on our site, and it'll be sent out after the session. And so if you want to connect, our contact information is there. We're building this plan out in real time. There's other elements that I just don't have the time to get into tonight, but when it comes to the night economy, I just want to, you know, if you take a couple of things away. If you're a business and you're connected to a BIA, there's a representative that you can connect with that is inherently connected to this SafeTO work. If you are working with people, your staff, your clients coming in, your participants, or the people leaving, and they're having mental health crisis, there is a place to turn to immediately for help. If you are experiencing hardcore safety challenges and emerging trends, you know, we have some amazing representatives from Toronto Police Service here tonight, and I can speak to the Neighborhood Community Officer Program. Get to know your Neighborhood Community Officer Program, get to know your local division. They will work with you and work with us because we're working collaboratively on the back end to advance safety and well-being. If you've experienced violence in your community, there is a city program and other community-based supports that can help you and your staff with the healing and recovery. So I know often there people say there's nothing happening. I can tell you there's a whole world of stuff happening, and you may not know about it. So tonight I'm here. So I can share that with you. So hopefully you can take some of that away, but I'm also taking the comments, the questions that are in the Slido, and all of the other information back so we can continue to improve this work. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. And there's some questions coming up.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Scott. You know, we've heard a lot so far in this town hall. And I just kind of want to bring it all together before we go into the next point. But from this point onward, you know, and from what Scott has mentioned, you can see that the night economy is something that's robust. It's something that is not very straightforward. And there's a lot that needs to be taken into account when we do think about what that night economy means. We're not just looking at reviewing the document that we and the conversations and the consultations that existed. We're not just talking about the good neighbor, the resources that exist. We're also looking at, you know, SafeTO and the elements that are going to keep everybody in this city also safe and being able to engage with the night economy. And through that now, we're also moving on to another Slido. But from that Slido, we'll end up going into another portion of it, which is going to be Toronto Public Health, which also plays an important role. So you get an understanding of this idea of holistic, the ability to, you know, look at something that's very complex and be able to look at it with a diversity of voices and minds at the table to be able to discuss what the night economy is for the city of Toronto. So Slido. Please, everybody, if you can, log back into your Slido, tap on your screen if you're on your phone. But at this time, I would like to know, how familiar are you with SafeTO and the programs mentioned? Please select the response that best represents your awareness. So trending as our top choice with 30% of people who have been engaged in, 28% is, this is their first time hearing. Oh, it's gone quickly. This is awesome to see, but the first two are had some information and known about SafeTO programs, but some of the information is new to them. First time hearing about SafeTO. Seems that we're going to kind of an even division amongst the choices that are up. Had heard about SafeTO, but wasn't really sure what it was all about. And then lastly, I'm familiar with SafeTO and the programs included in this presentation. So I'd like to say, if this is something that's new to you and you haven't really heard about this, please take the time to follow up with Scott and this team, and being able to learn more about it and use those resources that are at your disposal. Next question. After learning about SafeTO and the programs involved, I'd like for you to select one word to describe how you're feeling about the future of community safety and well-being. Optimistic, concerned, hopeful. I'd say for those in, the words, then if you chose concerned, or if that was something that you saw, please do reach out to SafeTO and ask questions, learn more. Hopeful and optimistic. It's great to see you engaging with this and what, some of the things you're feeling about the future of our community safety and well-being here in the city of Toronto. So as we move along, we're not quite done yet. And as I said, it takes a lot to be able to focus on what the night economy is here. So at this point, I would like to welcome to you Upala Chandrasekara from the Toronto Public Health. She's the Director of Toronto Public Health, to speak to you about Our Health, Our City. So please give Upala a round of applause.
Hello, good evening. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for the invitation to be here today. I'm really grateful to the night economy. I've worked in healthcare over 20 years, and I really want to say thank you all so much for supporting healthcare workers. There's nothing like a warm meal in your favorite restaurant at the end of a really long, hard shift. So thank you all so much. As Chris said, I'm Upala Chandrasekara. I'm Director of Public Health. I'm responsible for public health strategy and clinical services. Before I jump into our brief presentation, I promise it's brief because I know I'm the last speaker. I want you to know that we're working very closely with our partners and our colleagues at SafeTO and Economic Development and Culture to ensure that our work is aligned and that we find balance between improved health and wellness, safety, and supporting a vibrant night economy. As you know, health issues don't just happen during the daytime. Health issues happen 24 hours a day. So I'll be sharing with you some information with you tonight about some of the trends that we're seeing in our city with regards to our health, especially with regards to mental health and substance use. We know that substance use patterns and mental health both occur along a spectrum, from good health to illness, and we have a new citywide strategy with plans and partnerships designed to support everyone in our city. And this strategy is called Our Health, Our City. It is the mental health, substance use, harm reduction, and treatment strategy for Toronto. I want to thank Deputy Mayor Malik, who's here. She's been an incredible supporter, collaborator, and champion for our strategy. In our city, there are many issues causing increased mental health and substance use related harms for all ages and populations. These issues aren't unique to Toronto. It's happening all across the country, but I wanted to share some of the data with you tonight. It's estimated that as many as 1 in 5 Canadians experience a mental health issue or illness every year. and approximately 500,000 Canadians don't go to work every week because of a mental health related condition. This leads to about $6.3 billion of lost productivity. The Center for Addiction and Mental Health, CAMH, has stated that we are in a mental health crisis. Evidence shows that declining rates of mental health throughout Canada and novel stressors affecting mental health and well-being across the lifespan, they occur especially here in Toronto. For example, in 2021, only 55% of adults in Toronto reported very good or excellent mental health, a significant drop from 71% in 2017. The overall demand for mental health services has been increasing across our entire province, but only an estimated 28% of people in Ontario feel that mental health services are easy to access. Our strategy also includes a focus on substance use and addictions-related issues as well. As you can see on this slide, alcohol produces some of the highest burden of drug-related harms and deaths in Toronto. In an average year, alcohol is linked to 803 deaths and over 4,000 hospitalization and over 39,000 emergency department visits among those 15 years of age or older. Cannabis, as you know, was legalized in 2018. In 2022, approximately 29% of people over the age of 16 in Ontario reported using cannabis for non-medical purposes in the past 12 months. Tobacco is still on average responsible for over 2,000 deaths, over 11,000 hospitalizations, and over 15,000 emergency department visits annually in Toronto among people who are 35 years and older. At the same time, we remain amid a devastating drug toxicity crisis that has taken far too many lives across the country as well as in our city. In 2022, preliminary reports estimate that 509 opioid toxicity deaths occurred in Toronto, marking a 271% increase. 271% increase since 2015. With access to a full continuum of care and supports, these are all preventable deaths. I'll say that again, these are all preventable deaths. One of the reasons we call this a drug toxicity crisis is because many of these deaths have been fueled by an increasingly contaminated and unregulated drug supply. Fentanyl and fentanyl analogs like carfentanil, as well as benzodiazepines and tranquilizers like xylazine, are examples of concerning substances that have entered the unregulated drug supply and increase the risk of fatal and non-fatal overdoses. As you can see on the bottom left of the slide, there is a heat map of suspected opioid overdose calls to paramedics by neighborhood between July 22 and June 2023. We can see a few patterns emerge when we look at this map. Firstly, it tells us that substance use occurs across the entire city, and also that certainly there's a concentration of these calls in the downtown core. It's with this information in mind and this evidence in mind that we received direction from the Board of Health to develop an integrated strategy for the whole city. This strategy builds on decades of work, including the Toronto Drug Strategy from 2005. And it's well aligned with provincial and national frameworks for addressing mental health and substance use issues at a population level. My team, many of the members are here today. They're amazing. They conducted over a year and a half of community engagement with over 200 participants and 18 community roundtables, 84 stakeholder interviews, and 30 interviews and roundtables with people who use drugs. And Deputy Mayor McKelvey hosted a mental health roundtable in June 2023. All of these events were opportunities to hear from our community, from experts and people with lived and living experience of mental health and substance use issues. All of the consultations and feedback helped to shape the vision and recommendations included in the final strategy document. So here's the vision for our strategy, Our Health, Our City. Toronto is a diverse and resilient city that prioritizes the mental health, well-being, and safety of all residents. Everyone can access the healthcare services, resources, and community spaces they need to support their mental health and prevent substance use-related harms with dignity and ease. Mental health and substance use are addressed as health issues rather than criminal issues. Mental health and substance use stigma and discrimination have been eliminated. There are 7 goals guided by 5 key principles in this strategy. And the principles are health and safety for everyone, meaningful inclusion of people with lived and living experience, anti-oppression, anti-racism, and decolonization, evidence, innovation, and continuous improvement, and that it's citywide, collaborative, and comprehensive. I won't go into all the details, but I'll tell you the 7 key goals in the strategy. Goal 1 is to promote mental health and well-being across the lifespan. Some examples include addressing loneliness and social isolation across the lifespan through community programming and city initiatives that increase community connectedness. Goal 2 is to prevent and reduce the harms and deaths related to substance use across the lifespan. The third goal is to expand access to the full continuum of high-quality, evidence-based, and client-centered services to address mental health or substance use issues, including prevention, harm reduction, and treatment services. I'd like to mention that naloxone is widely available, and we have training resources and more information about this on our website if you're interested. The fourth goal is advancing community safety and well-being for everyone. You heard more about this from Scott just now. The fifth goal is to improve access to housing and other social determinants of health. Goal 6 is to support mentally healthy workplaces and optimize the mental health of workers. And finally, Goal 7 is to proactively identify and respond to emerging mental health and substance use issues. This includes using data to inform research and policy changes, as well as improving the reach and utility of Toronto Drug Alerts. Toronto Drug Alerts, these, we issue them regularly when we become aware of issues related to a toxic drug circulating in the community. So if you're not connected to the drug alerts, I really encourage you to sign up for these alerts. There are a lot of recommendations in the strategy, and as a city, we have identified 4 primary priorities for the year 1 of this strategy. I really strongly encourage you to check out the strategy. It's available online, and these are the 4 priorities that the city as a whole are focusing on with regards to implementation. So the first is advocating for ongoing and sustainable funding for shelter services and increasing funding for supportive housing to help people, individuals experiencing homelessness, and creating more affordable housing, including supportive housing for people with complex mental health or substance use related needs. Number 2 priority is advocating for an ongoing and sustainable funding to establish a 24/7 crisis stabilization center. We have several hospitals that are 24 hours a day in the city, but we do not have a mental health and substance use specifically related crisis center. And there are many of us working together to advocate for this for our city. Number 3 is advocating for ongoing and sustainable funding to collaborate with first responders and hospitals to implement a coordination protocol that enhances the seamless transfer of individuals experiencing mental health or substance use related crises to the most appropriate service. And number 4, advocating for ongoing and sustainable funding to expand the Toronto Community Crisis Service citywide as the city's 4th emergency service, and you heard all about it just now from Scott. So I'll keep this very short. Thank you so much for your time this evening. We look forward to working alongside you and our many partners to improve the health and well-being of our communities and to ensure that our city remains a vibrant and healthy place to live, work, and of course, participate in the thriving night economy in a safe and healthy way. Thanks so much for having me here.
Thank you so much for that, Ipula. It's just a lot of information and so valuable and important for us to be able to hear about our health, our city, and the initiatives that are being put forward to really help focus on the health of the citizens of our city so that you can engage in the night economy and be a part of that. So with that, just so that I can tap in and see if you all were listening, but also to be able to understand if there's any questions that you have. Oh, let's go back. We're going to jump back into Slido. So which of the 4 Our Health, Our City Year 1 priorities do you think will have the most impact on improving the health and well-being of our communities? Crisis, housing, 24/7 crisis stabilization space, first responder, hospital protocols, or expanded Toronto Community Crisis Services? Ooh, housing. 68% of the 79 people we have engaging with Slido right now say housing is one of the priorities that have the most impact on improving the health and well-being of our communities. And coming in next is expanded Toronto Community Crisis Services. Our next question is, what statement most accurately describes how you would think about accessing mental health or substance use related services for yourself in Toronto? Just a reminder, these questions are just, a way for us to be able to engage with you, but also to understand, what you're being presented with so that the city can better prepare and put into place ways to help you all. So we have, with the people engaging right now, so far, I would search online. I would talk to my family doctor and accessing services. As the top 2 that people are really engaging with. I'd like to say that a lot of the information that was provided today, there's resources that you are able to have access to. So if it is something that you are unsure of, please do utilize the resources that Upala and Scott were able to mention that you can have at your disposal to be able to understand and learn more. Moving on. This is a poll, a true or false question. The unregulated street drug supply in Toronto is extremely contaminated with unknown substances, and it's difficult to know exactly what's in the supply or how strong it might be, which increases the risk of overdoses. All overdose deaths are preventable. And true it is. Again, utilizing those resources and understanding the circumstances that we're being dealt and the things that are being faced with our community is important, and understanding that this statement is true. Moving along, how would you describe how to help someone you see in the city experiencing a mental health or substance use related crisis? I'm not comfortable providing support to someone experiencing a crisis in the city. I would likely call the police. I would likely call the Toronto Community Crisis Service for someone who looked like they were experiencing a crisis. I know which number to call for someone experiencing a crisis, and I also carry naloxone, in case someone is experiencing an overdose. So right now what we see in engaging with the Slido, I would likely call the Toronto Community Crisis Service for someone who looked like they were experiencing a crisis. And then we have people trying to, I would likely call the police. I'd just like to mention that there are other resources that you can call. Scott mentioned a lot of that opportunities to be able to really engage and understand that, there are other ways in which you can engage and help somebody who might be experiencing something. And there's other options than also being able to call the police when you see that too as well. So just be mindful of the things that you can engage with and the resources that exist out there. There are opportunities to be able to have that, and that Toronto Community Crisis Service is one of those great initiatives that are being put forward. So please do utilize that. All right. We have all made it to this time. I would like to thank you all for being a part of this and taking the time to listen to all of those presentations. The individuals that have presented today, their team, they've worked a lot on this and they're really passionate about it, I can say. They do enjoy the work that they do, and they really want to see the night economy here in our city be able to be vibrant, to continue to be vibrant, be one that also supports everybody, and is one that is holistic and has an opportunity to really look at the complexity of it and look at it from a perspective of being able to have a diverse group of individuals, of voices, of perspectives play a role in what the night economy looks like. And that's why it's important that you all showed up here today, whether in person or virtually, to be able to take a part in this town hall for the first time. And hopefully you'll come back and engage with this town hall when it happens in other years as well. So you've had an opportunity to engage with the Slido. At the beginning of our presentation, we were looking to see if there were any questions that you had for the night economy, so that we would be able to, in this opportunity, be able to answer some of those questions that we see. So you can also be able to, if you look at the Slido, if you haven't, review the other submissions by other participants and like the questions that you have also answered. Like I had mentioned earlier before, the questions that do receive the most amount of likes are the questions that we will be able to get to. We do have a little bit of time to be able to get through those questions. Please use the Slido to ask your question, and if we don't get a chance to get to your question, we'll be following up with those via email so that you will be able to get a response to as well. Are we ready? Awesome. I'm gonna pull phone out. My apologies, try not to engage with it too much. But just like another piece, I will take the question in and then I'll direct it to the person that most likely will be able to respond to that question and give you that response. There's mics at the side of the room for those individuals who are going to be speaking, who have been presenting today. That being said, starting off with the first question, what is being done to address the war on live music venues? People living on major streets, above bars, having the power to shut down these spaces is awful. This question has a variety of people that could answer, but I'm going to first direct this to Mike, who does field a lot of that music questions that do happen within our city. So Mike, please go ahead.
Check. I don't, oh, there we go. Yep. Thank you. Thanks, Chris, and thanks, Andrew, for the question. It's a great one. When any business fails, it's very disappointing. When a live music venue goes out of business, shut down, it can be a real tragedy, especially when and if that music venue catered to a particular community, a particular genre, was in a particular part of the city that isn't well served. It's not just a Toronto problem. We know in a lot of other cities as well. We have live music venues shutting for a variety of reasons. Couple of things I want to point out off the top here, and I'll keep my answer short because I know we've got a lot of questions to get to. But complaints. Okay, so let me back up for a sec. Densification is a thing in Toronto, particularly in the downtown core, where a lot of live music venues exist. This has always been a challenge, striking a balance between the residential community, the other businesses, and businesses like live music venues that generate a lot of vibrancy, a lot of spillover business, a lot of what we call associated nightlife activity, which might not even be things that are happening in the venue. It's the Ubers dropping off and picking up. It's the lineups. It's the people smoking outside. It's those kinds of things. Always been a challenge. It probably got worse during the pandemic. Our friends in municipal licensing and standards will tell us that noise complaints went through the roof since about March 2020. And they haven't abated since then. So it's been a challenge for a long time. It's probably gotten worse. Another thing I want to share with you, Andrew, and the 60 people who also voted this question as being an important one, is that the reason that live music venues, at least in Toronto, close for the most part is not noise complaints. It's a real estate question. You would be surprised, some of you, to learn how few live music venues own the building in which they occupy space. In Toronto, it's around 5%. So when you have no property ownership in the sector and buildings are bought and sold and they go up in value and there's a lot of gentrification and a lot of rising land values, live music venues are like little coffee shops or independent bookstores. They really have no way of hanging on to those premises. It's one of the reasons that we've started to see more live music venues move to parts of the city where real estate is less expensive, where commercial rents are lower. So I'm being a bit circuitous. I'll try and, like a good city bureaucrat, hit you with a couple of city programs that we've been using to try to stop this attrition to some degree. One is that back in 2019, our friends at Municipal Licensing and Standards reviewed and revamped the noise bylaw. And when they did that, they changed what's called a point of reception to what used to be the property line of the venue, or even front of house inside a music venue, to the site where the complaint has been lodged from. In most cases, that would be where the resident lives. A few things were changed recently or in the process of being tweaked with the noise bylaw. That place where the measurement occurs is not one of them. So that, I think, is better for a live music venue in terms of triaging those complaints and being able to manage what the real impact is on the surrounding community. The other thing is, with new builds, with new residential development that happens, particularly in the downtown core, but anywhere in the city, we have something that was alluded to earlier. It's called the agent of change principle. And what that stipulates is that the new development, in many cases a condominium development, a residential development, is viewed as the agent of change, and it's incumbent on them to take steps to mitigate any potential sound conflict between pre-existing music venues generating vibrancy, noise, whatever, and potential complaints from future residents 2 years, 5 years down the line. We began this in 2018. In that time, my office has reviewed hundreds of development applications, had lots of conversations with developers and acoustic engineering consultants about steps that can be taken to mitigate these kinds of conflicts. And we insist now that the developer include a warning advisory on every offer of purchase and sale to anything within 120 meters of a live music venue. I've been going on for 120 minutes. That's why I said that. So that's the answer, Andrew. Feel free to get a hold of my office if you'd like any more detail on anything that I've said. Thanks for the question.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Mike. And thank you so much, Andrew, for one, not being anonymous, but allowing for us to hear that question, and 60 people also who asked and liked that question. So moving along, our next question that we have from an anonymous user, which 54 people have liked, is, what do we need to do in order to extend the last call past 2 a.m.? Cities with vibrant night economies have much later last calls. Why is it like this? I'm going to take that time to patch this along to my homeboy, Mitch.
Thanks, Chris. I'll stand up, actually. Yeah, thanks for the question, and thanks for everyone who upvoted it for discussion. I know this has been consideration for many business operators. Also something in the media. I know Montreal is considering, certain boroughs or quarters of the city to have, 24-hour nightlife activation, and their liquor license hours are until 3 a.m. I think I should clarify just to start that the municipal business licensing process is separate and distinct from liquor licensing. The liquor licensing process is regulated by the province, the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario. The city, through the city clerk's office, does have some delegated authority to consider some, I think, temporary permissions. So this is like a special occasion permit for specific events, or a temporary extension of that liquor service, typically until 4 a.m., which the local councillor is involved with, gives input, and requires non-objection to those temporary permissions. To my knowledge, I don't think in recent years, the City Council has made any request to the province to consider an extension of that 2 a.m. Current kind of a liquor license, liquor service timeline, which is province-wide. But again, I'll just reiterate that is provincial authority, but MLS does work with the AGCO to focus on, specific enforcement initiatives when there's, issues related to business licensing and to liquor service, because the AGCO also has some enforcement capacity. But we do have our email, and we're also happy to talk about what some of the benefits could be of those extensions, and as well of how the city can support operators with some of those temporary permissions, and how we can facilitate an easier process and more efficient process there. So that's a long answer to a really great question. Thanks, Chris.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Mitch. So we're moving along to our next question that we see from another anonymous user who has engaged with us, and 45 people also have liked. A fulsome night economy or nighttime economy should include accessible transit. Will weekend, Friday and Saturday, extended hours for TTC be consulted on? I'm going to pass this along to our TTC representative, Jasmine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks.
Thank you, Jasmine.
Thank you. Jasmine Iftikhari, Acting Manager for the Service Planning Department of the TTC. Great question. I'll first mention a couple of initiatives we're already working on, and I'll talk a little bit about our longer term plans. So we are already working on exploring more frequent and better coverage on our existing overnight transit service as part of our 5-year service plan, which is being presented to our board this year in 2024. We're also going to be piloting extending our overnight streetcar service, both in terms of frequency and coverage on our streetcar network to address the availability of streetcar vehicles, and also the ongoing construction and modernization of our streetcar garages. Early this year, going into the spring, we're going to be starting working on our 2025 annual service plan, which is basically the plan that outlines what type of service and service initiatives we're going to have in 2025. Right now we're in the early stages of developing the plan, but throughout the year, as we get closer to the spring and summer, there's going to be extensive consultation and customer and stakeholder engagement with regards to the plan. All of that is going to be posted on our website, ttc.ca. Hopefully customers and community members can be part of those consultations and provide us with suggestions and comments. Obviously there is always limitations with regards to overnight service, because that's especially on our subway network when a lot of the construction of a state of good repair happens. But we're going to continue to be part of the internal working group of the night economy, and we're going to work closely with our colleagues at the city to make sure that we can provide the right level of service, the right type of service, and where it's needed most.
Thank you so much for that response, Jasmine, and thank you, anonymous user, for your question. Bumping the next question up. Mitch, I don't know if this falls into your category. I know you spoke a little bit about it in the previous question before Jasmine, but wondering if you could speak a little bit to the question that we are seeing here. Are there opportunities for 24-hour licenses for nightclubs or rave organizations? Organizers.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks for the question. I think to start, our municipal business licensing framework really focuses on more permanent brick and mortar establishments and setting out clear licensing categories and requirements for those businesses. There's currently not, a license requirement for a temporary rave or a temporary event. But as I mentioned, with some of those temporary liquor license permissions, those would typically be required for events like this. The city and MLS have been asked to kind of consider what kind of framework could be assessed for pop-up business licensing. And through our report in December, we did a bit of an assessment about this, about creating a new temporary licensing requirement. It determined there wasn't necessarily a clear municipal purpose or benefit to introducing a specific permit or license for raves or kind of temporary events of that nature. But I might pass it to someone at EDC if they want to talk about maybe just general activation of these kind of events and how their city supports generally. But I don't know if Mike or Luke. Okay.
Yeah. That's it? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
No worries. Thank you for that, Mitch. I would also say if you have any more things that you want to specifically to do with this question, to definitely obviously email the nighteconomy@toronto.ca. So moving along, we're going to move into the next question that we have. Are there any thoughts around creating public nighttime spaces for communities to gather that are low cost / free? I'm going to direct this to Pat. Please.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I'm Pat Tobin. So yes, we are trying to do a lot, looking at what type of space might be able to be accessible and how you bring down the barriers to accessing it. So the first is looking at city-owned space. So I don't know if anyone here, maybe by show of hands, has been out to It's Okay at 468 Queen West. Yeah, so that is property that fell into the city's possession, was to have been affordable housing. We couldn't make the site work, so we converted it on a temporary leasing agreement with It's Okay. Mike had a lot to do with that. So we're looking at city-owned spaces. We have another request out now for space at 32 Lisgar in West Queen West. So organizations who want to take out a license are able to do so there. So City Space is one. We are also working with, if anyone knows Why Not Theater and Ravi Jain, we're working with them on turnkey solutions for meanwhile spaces. So this is like, they've been working with Deloitte, who has a big office tower, and they only use it till 6 o'clock in the PM. What happens thereafter? Why Not's been focused at rehearsal space, which is at a premium in the city, but we are looking at how you might use such spaces for uses later into the evening. So a lot of it, like what you've heard, is more on the regulatory side, trying to open stuff up that's currently out of reach, a little less on the granting side, but we are trying to figure out as well how we can support organizations like Akin projects in this city who produce really interesting space solutions that look at meanwhile or like liminal space.
Thank you so much for that, Pat. I'll speak a little bit to that question too myself. Sitting on the board at It's Okay and Akin, two of those spaces or two of those organizations that do work with the city and trying to find out low-cost barrier spaces for people to engage with. For our next question, could libraries be used as spaces for night economy efforts, events, activations? Alok, I believe you can.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So libraries currently have been used for a lot of activations and events. In terms of doing late night activations, that's something we'll have to speak to our colleagues at Toronto Public Libraries, and we can certainly get that answer for you. But it is a really great idea of utilizing space in different ways.
Thanks, Luke. Just a quick word. Some of you have probably been to events in the Parkdale Library. Or the Shaw Street branch, or Metro Reference Library. These things do happen, and we have worked a little bit here and there with TPL staff. There's nothing preventing things going late at libraries other than staffing costs. That's really the nut. So if you're an event and you want to do something in a library, you can get an SOP to sell alcohol in the library if that's the linchpin of your event. And you can also go late. So it's really just a question of the individual library, the staffing questions, the details of your event. But these things are workable and possible. And I believe the library in general has a philosophical orientation towards being a space that does more than lend books.
Thank you so much for that, Mike. So we've come to the end of our evening. It's been one that you've gotten a lot of information thrown at you, and I appreciate you for staying patient and listening to so much of what had to be said about our night economy and the work that has been done and is continuing to be done to help improve the night economy within our city. So we appreciate you attending this first annual night economy town hall. We appreciate that you've taken this time and your contributions to our Q&A. That's not the place that it's not ending there because you didn't get your question to be responded to. There's still other ways for you to engage, and those questions are still one that everybody is going to be able to see. So they will take the time to send you a response to those questions because it is important for you to engage, but it's also important for you to be able to hear a response, and it's also important for there to be action taken, and that's what we're here today to see and to be a part of. So to access any of the general information about the Night Economy Town Hall, please visit toronto.ca/night-economy. For information specific to the materials that were shared today and the implementation of licensing and zoning regulations related to restaurants, bars, and entertainment venues, please visit toronto.ca/night-economy review to find out more. And then always, and very important, feel free to reach out via email at nightheconomy@toronto.ca. We thank you so much. We want to hear from you. We want you to stay engaged. Your feedback is super valuable. So I want you to take the time to scan the QR code to access our post-event survey and provide your feedback. Let us know how we did tonight, more them, less me, and share your thoughts for the future Night Economy town halls. Thank you again so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your evening and stay safe for those in person, and those virtually, please stay safe as well.
Some nights I wish that my life could build a castle. Some nights I wish they'd just fall off. But I still wake up, I still see your ghost. Oh Lord, I'm still not sure what I stand for. Oh, what do I stand for?